Hello everyone, Time to Grind here, and today I wanted to talk about the Survivalists. And the Survivalists is a really charming survival crafting game with some cool adventure mechanics thrown into the mix. And before we get into the review, I do just want to let you guys know that I was given an early review copy of the game in order to make a video for you guys. I never let that influence my reviews, I just like staying as transparent as possible for you all. And also, sorry if I sound a little weird, I'm still feeling pretty sick. I just wanted to give you guys a little taste of what you could expect in the Survivalists. And something to keep in mind before we get into my review of the game is that I am normally not the biggest fan of survival crafting games. You know, there's definitely some that I have played and enjoyed, but normally I'm not that too drawn to them, but this game looked like it had a lot more to offer with the adventure aspects, and so I decided to give it a shot. And so I only have a couple of hours under my belt, and so obviously I have not explored or done everything there is to do in the game. I'm sure after the game comes out there will be some insane in-depth reviews of the game from channels that focus on these types of games a little bit more, but I just wanted to give you guys almost like a first impressions of the game. And so you start off stranded on an island with pretty much no materials, and a tutorial kind of walks you through the basics of crafting and picking up materials and eating to restore your health and hunger, and by default you have a certain amount of items that you can craft for yourself. And it's represented in this crafting tree, and from the start you only have this hand axe that you can craft, but as you craft things in the tree you unlock more and more things you can craft. And I really liked this concept at first because it gave crafting a unique spin in that it had a sense of progression instead of just learning or finding new recipes in the world. And eventually you'll have basic tools to chop down trees, attack enemies, and cook and craft bigger things. And from there, it's kind of up to you to just explore the island, and there isn't much direction and you have kind of a limited inventory, so I was kind of just wandering around until I found a little hut, and then it taught me about crafting larger items using blueprints. And so you discover this whole other crafting tree that allows you to craft things like beds and other large items. And when you place the blueprint down, you can then go to it in the world and put in the materials needed to craft it, and then you can use your crafting tool to actually build it. And just like the first crafting tree, you unlock new things to craft the more you actually craft in this tree. And also, the only way to pass time faster and save your progress is to go to sleep in a bed, which isn't too out of the ordinary for a survival game, so, you know, you got that. And so I started to explore the different things I could craft, and then I stumbled across a temple. And the temples consist of different rooms of enemies where you clear them, and when you clear all of them, there's a couple chests of items and materials, and then there was a monkey. And if you've seen the trailers of this game, the monkeys are actually like a giant part of this game. It's kind of confusing and overwhelming at first, but you can get monkeys as allies, and you can have them do, honestly, almost everything that you can do. So if you go into monkey mode, you can tell them to follow you, or you can tell them to watch something you do. And so if you fight enemies in the time that they're watching you, and they have a weapon you give to them, they'll actually fight with you. And the same goes with collecting materials, crafting items, chopping down trees, and this seems like it could get really, really deep, really, really fast. For me, I kept it kind of simple because I was a little intimidated by the system, so I was taking some baby steps, so I just had them help me fight when I was in combat, and then when I found this big chest, I just had one of the monkeys carry it around and follow me the entire time because I was starting to get so annoyed by the small inventory system. Like, it is a crafting survival game where you have all of these different tools and weapons you need to hold, but then there's all these different materials as well that you want to collect, and there's probably, you know, a way later on in the game to get a larger inventory, but for the time that I was playing, I was getting so annoyed by the small inventory. That's why I just had the monkey follow me around holding the chest the entire time. But, you know, it's kind of cool that you can have the monkeys really just do whatever you want to help you. And speaking of survival crafting mechanics, this game also has a health and hunger system. So obviously in combat you can take damage, which you can heal with food, but you also need to eat constantly to not get hungry. And you can eat raw materials like berries or coconuts, but in order to actually regen a lot of your health and hunger, you kind of need to cook them in recipes. And you can cook food in different recipes by using a fire pit and putting in the materials needed to create the food. And it works in the same way as the other crafting trees. You unlock new recipes by making the original recipes. And I have to say, this is probably because I'm not the biggest hardcore survival crafting fan, but the hunger system kind of annoyed me pretty bad. It was like I was having to constantly worry about finding food, which I guess is the point of a survival game, and I'm sure a ton of people loved this stuff, but to me it got annoying pretty quickly. And so eventually you can craft a blueprint of a crafting table that will allow you to craft even more items, and it has its own crafting tree as well. And so it seems like the main objective of the game is to get off the island, obviously, and to do that you have to obtain all these different types of keys and go to different dungeons and get different parts like compasses, and so that's really, really cool. You have a set plan to go on, and it gives you some motivation to get further in the game. My problem with the game, though, is that at first, those crafting trees are really awesome. It gives you a sense of progression and everything, but then I hit a point where I knew I wanted to go to the island to the west of me and I needed a raft. And I couldn't craft a raft already, so I just had to spend several days crafting completely irrelevant items that I didn't even want in the crafting tree just to try to find where the raft could be unlocked in that whole entire crafting tree. And the crafting tree system really worked for me up until the point of me having to craft completely random things I didn't want to craft at that moment. And so this is where I think I differ from the main target audience of the game. Like I said at the beginning of the review, I am not a giant survival crafting fan, and this game still stood out to me because, one, just the charm and polish the game has, which I will say now after playing it for a couple hours, is fantastic. The game definitely feels unique and has heart and soul, which is definitely what you want in a game, and there are definitely adventure mechanics in the game with the dungeons and keys and everything, and I know I haven't even scratched the surface of all of that, but at its core, it is a survival crafting game. And if you're into these types of games, I think this will be the game of the year for you, at the very least a game that you could easily sink hundreds of hours into. You know, it has an immense amount of charm and polish, and the crafting mechanics are super deep. The monkey system seems like you could do some crazy stuff with it, you know, especially having monkeys work with other monkeys, and, you know, it has online co-op as well, which is huge for these types of games. For me, however, because I am not the biggest survival crafting fan, I started to get a little bit more annoyed than I really should have with things like the hunger system, the crafting tree mechanics, and just a little bit of the slower pacing. But like I said earlier, I don't hold any of that against the game, because I guarantee you, if you are watching this review and you are a fan of survival and crafting games, you're probably thinking I am completely crazy because the game looks super fun, and it definitely is. So I would highly recommend the game if, like I said, you are into these survival crafting games. Otherwise, if you're kind of like me and you were looking a little bit more for some of the adventure aspects of it, you know, the survival and crafting elements definitely are at the forefront of this game, so I might hold off a little bit. But if you have played the Survivalists, or just from watching gameplay, I would love to know your guys' thoughts in the comments down below. I love talking with you all. And if you enjoyed this video, then consider leaving a like down below and subscribing to see more content. I make about 2 to 3 game reviews a week, and I have a ton more games to review in the next week or so. So subscribe and ring that bell like all the big boy YouTubers say to see those in the future. And if you can't get enough of me, I have a podcast with some friends called Media Crash, where every episode we talk about a different genre of movies or TV or video games, and the last episode we talked about reality shows, so check that out if it interests you. And if you're going to be grinding out some days in the Survivalists, I wish you luck, and see you guys next time.